Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Gates. I'm Alessio, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Beyond the Gates, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. I never thought I'd find myself back in that apartment again. It was the kind of place that held too many ghosts of the past, each corner whispering stories that made my chest tighten. Moving day should have been simple: boxes, tape, a few heavy lifts, but somehow, when Tomas offered to help, it became something else entirely. There's something about the way he moves, strong and deliberate, that makes your heart skip without warning. Watching him lift boxes, muscles flexing, sweat glistening, made me feel like the world had narrowed down to just the two of us in that moment. I shouldn't have been thinking about that, not while my heart was still tangled in the mess Kat left behind, but I couldn't stop myself. Tomas has this way of looking at you that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. And today, he looked at me with a mixture of pride and a hint of something else, something almost teasing. I'm still bothered, he admitted, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed but not stiffly. Kat said I was bad in bed.
Can you believe that?
He chuckled, though there was a flicker of genuine irritation in his eyes. I grinned, stepping closer. Oh, I can believe it. But clearly you were holding back, because I know what's coming next. I pulled him into a kiss before he could protest, and just like that, the tension we'd been ignoring all week broke like a dam. His lips on mine felt like fireworks, slow, consuming, impossible to ignore. My hands found his neck, his hands tangled in my hair, and suddenly the world outside that apartment didn't exist. Not the bills, not Doug's death, not the police station calls, not even Kat's lingering shadow. Just us, and a heat that wouldn't quit. When I finally pulled away, breathless, I asked the question that had been buzzing in my brain like a trapped bee. What about Kat? He shrugged casually, like it didn't matter, though the muscles in his jaw tightened slightly. We're over. End of story. And just like that, we slipped back into each other, letting the previous months of hurt and mistrust dissolve in the fire we ignited. That afternoon was a blur of laughter, whispered jokes, and touches that lingered longer than they had any right to. Tomas was incredible. 5-star review, no question. And then, as if the universe loved chaos too much to let me have a single unbothered moment, Kat showed up. Chelsea had nudged her, encouraged her, practically set the stage for reconciliation or sabotage, depending on how you looked at it. Kat stepped into the apartment with that smile that could cut glass, and the first words out of her mouth were about peace. About sharing. About maybe understanding each other one day. I froze, mid-step, mid-thought, as the bathroom door opened. A towel, wet hair, and a look that made my stomach knot in the most complicated way. Tomas, always oblivious to the full chaos around him, glanced at her and then back at me. The air turned heavy. I could feel every heartbeat, every flash of memory of every fight, and every betrayal that Kat had sown. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Ted's life was unraveling in a way that was almost laughably cruel. He had stopped by to check on Eva, only to discover she and Leslie had swapped living spaces. Leslie, ever the provocateur, had champagne and caviar waiting. She was dressed in a way that screamed, "Look at me," and her words only made it worse. "We've been busy," she said, eyes sparkling, voice smooth like silk over steel. She didn't need to spell it out. Ted knew exactly what she meant. I watched from my place on the couch, trying not to eavesdrop, but unable to resist. Leslie was ruthless in her play, teasing, reminding, dangling temptation with a precision that could only come from years of practice. She suggested, subtly and not so subtly, that he consider her again, but he stood firm. His hands tightened around the bottle of water he'd grabbed, knuckles white. He left eventually, defeated but proud in some way. Leslie raised her glass, smiling at the empty room, toasting to a victory no one else would see. Back at ChelseaKat HQ, the launch day chaos was in full swing. Bags flew off digital shelves, live streamed online, hearts raced in chat rooms. And yet, even in the middle of all that triumph, there was Allison. She found her way in, twisting a cop into giving her access to the call lines, sending chaos through our virtual celebration. Chelsea handled it with grace, far better than I would have, but my nerves were shot. The adrenaline from the launch, mixed with the shock of Allison's intrusion, left me shaking, just a little. And yet, somehow, the day ended on a high note, the new purse line a roaring success, proof that even in a world designed to trip you up, sometimes you can still win. Then there's Vanessa. Oh, Vanessa. I don't know how to even start without feeling the weight of her grief pressing down like a fist. She had been at the police station, trying desperately to understand Doug's death. She blamed herself. Every small choice she'd made that day, every tiny moment where she hadn't pushed harder, hadn't asked the right questions. And all the while, Joey's shadow loomed, an ambiguous, dangerous presence that promised more pain than relief. Randy showed up at the casino, shaking hands with Joey, trying to secure his own survival. "If I'm already on the highway to hell," he said, and I swear, even writing this now, I can feel the chill of that statement. Might as well hitch my wagon to the devil I know. It's the kind of line that sticks in your chest, makes you realize just how twisted loyalty and fear can get when survival is on the line. Vanessa, standing there in the doorway, heard the words she probably shouldn't have. Her face didn't betray much, but the small flicker in her eyes said everything. She understood. And that, right there, is the cruel reality of life in our world. There's never a clean break, never a moment where everything resolves neatly. People lie, people betray, people act in ways that seem incomprehensible until you feel the raw, personal pressure of fear and grief and desire pressing down on you. And in the midst of it all, we try to find our footing, to find love, to find revenge, to find closure, any little shard of peace that feels real. I want to tell you about Tomas and Eva again, because that afternoon wasn't just lust or impulsive passion. It was reclaiming a moment of life that had been denied to them. Eva's laugh echoed through the apartment as Tomas carried a box that was far too heavy for one person. "You're insane," she called, grinning, trying not to crush him with affection. "I can handle it," he insisted, muscles straining, face turning slightly red as he laughed along. There's a raw intimacy in these small acts, a dance of care and reckless abandon that makes the heart ache in a good way. Later, as Tomas showered, Eva sat on the edge of the bed, hair falling in her eyes, thinking about everything that had led her here. Kat's face, Tomas's touch, Doug's absence, it all collided in a storm inside her chest. She didn't know what the next day would bring, or if peace was even possible, but for the first time in months, she felt alive. Not just surviving, not just moving through life like a ghost, but living. This story could go on for hours, capturing every heartbeat, every glance, every whispered lie and confession. Every character is caught in the push and pull of desire, grief, ambition, and betrayal. And in the midst of all that chaos, we find moments of beauty, the ones that remind us why we keep going, why we keep loving, and why we keep hoping even when the world seems determined to crush us. This is just part one, and we're already deep into the emotional undercurrents of Beyond the Gates. There's so much more. Tomas and Eva's complicated entanglement, Vanessa's spiraling grief, Ted's battle with temptation, Leslie's calculated moves, Chelsea's chaos, and Joey's shadowy machinations. Every moment needs to be felt, every subtle gesture examined, every heartbeat chronicled. The apartment had finally quieted down, though not in the way you might hope. Tomas had retreated to the bathroom, steam curling from the shower and fogging the mirrors, leaving me alone with my thoughts, and, of course, Kat. The air felt thick, heavy, like the calm after a storm, except the storm wasn't over. It was just paused. I sat down on the edge of the couch, trying to process the sudden shift from passion to tension. Kat didn't move immediately, either. She just stood there, watching me with that calculating expression that always seemed to suggest she knew more than she let on. "Eva," she said finally, voice soft but deliberate. "I know I haven't been the best sister. I get that. But maybe we could find a way to understand each other." I wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted desperately to. But the other part, the part that remembered every lie, every betrayal, every manipulative smile, stiffened like armor forming around my heart. You mean, understand me so you can figure out how to win Tomas back? I said, keeping my tone light, though inside I felt the sting of hurt. She flinched just slightly, which was enough to make me pause. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe she really did want something else. Maybe. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. Just as she spoke, Tomas stepped out of the bathroom in nothing but a towel, water dripping from his hair, and the moment exploded into a maelstrom of tension, embarrassment, and raw, unspoken desire. I felt my face heat instantly, my chest tightening. Kat's eyes widened, the perfectly controlled expression faltering for the first time since she walked in. Tomas, ever oblivious to the chaos of the world around him, gave me a small, reassuring smile, like we'd just shared some secret no one else could touch. And in that tiny, fleeting moment, I realized something terrifyingly simple. Desire, history, and betrayal were never going to exist in neat little boxes. They were messy, combustible, and deliciously dangerous. Meanwhile, Ted's misadventures were reaching their own fever pitch. He had left Leslie's apartment still reeling from the unexpected revelations, caviar on the counter, and the faint scent of champagne lingering in the air. Leslie's victory wasn't just about seduction. It was about psychological warfare, a reminder that some people thrive in chaos while others are paralyzed by it. Ted drove away slowly, hands gripping the steering wheel like he was afraid it would vanish under his palms. He couldn't stop thinking about her, the way she'd moved, laughed, taunted him with a glance. It was infuriating, terrifying, and somehow intoxicating. He told himself it would never happen again, that he was done with Leslie's games, and yet his mind betrayed him at every turn. He was caught in a storm of his own making, trying desperately to hold onto morality while being pulled into temptation. Leslie, alone now, poured herself a fresh glass of champagne, swirling it in the crystal with an almost ceremonial air. Wouldn't be so sure, she whispered to herself, as if the empty room could somehow answer back. In her world, victory was measured not in the affection of others, but in control, in the ability to bend hearts and minds without ever breaking a sweat. And right now, she was winning. At ChelseaKat HQ, the day's victory had come at a cost. The launch had been a spectacle, a brilliant display of marketing genius, and yet Allison's intrusion had reminded us just how fragile our triumphs were. Chelsea handled it with her usual poise, though I could see the tension behind her eyes, the tiny flinch when the cop handed over his phone, the shake in her hands as she spoke into the camera for the live stream. Success had a bitter aftertaste today, proof that no matter how perfectly you plan, someone or something always finds a way to disrupt. The bags, though, the bags were perfect. They flew off the virtual shelves, a tangible reminder that even amidst chaos, creation still mattered. Every positive comment, every order, every heart emoji in the live chat was a victory, proof that hard work and passion could shine, even when the world around you threatened to tear everything apart. And Vanessa. God, Vanessa. I can't stop thinking about her. She stood in the doorway of Joey's office, hearing everything she probably shouldn't have, the casual, cold way Joey discussed, arranging another accident, the way Randy pledged loyalty in whispers that felt like dagger points to her heart. She blamed herself for Doug's death, turning inward, asking questions no one could answer. She wondered if his death had been more than an accident, if her inaction, her choices, had somehow pushed him into danger. The grief in her eyes was almost too heavy to watch. I wanted to reach out to hug her, to scream that it wasn't her fault, but of course I didn't. She didn't need my words. She needed clarity, truth, a light in a place where shadows had taken permanent residence. And I had none to give. Back at the apartment, Tomas and I settled into a strange rhythm, one forged by desire and complicated by fear. He was meticulous in the little things, making sure my boxes were stacked safely, ensuring that the apartment felt lived in and loved. And yet, every glance he gave me, every small touch, carried a weight I couldn't shake. It was as if we were both aware of the fragile thread we were balancing on, a thread woven from past heartbreak, present desire, and the unspoken tension of futures we couldn't predict. I remember one moment in particular. He had set a box down on the floor with a soft thud, dust motes dancing in the afternoon light that streamed through the window. I leaned against the counter, watching him breathe, feeling a heat that had nothing to do with the weather. "You're impossible," I said softly, shaking my head. He smiled, that lazy, knowing smile that made my chest tighten. "Not impossible," he said. "Just worth it." And I believed him, maybe more than I should have, because for a fleeting moment, the world outside didn't exist. The weight of Kat's betrayal, the shadow of Doug's absence, the chaos at ChelseaKat HQ, all of it faded. There was just us. But life has a funny way of reminding you that no peace lasts forever. Kat didn't leave immediately. She lingered, conversations starting and stopping, accusations and apologies tangled together like wires that shouldn't touch. Tomas, towel still clinging to him, didn't seem to notice the tension in the same way I did. Or maybe he just chose to ignore it, choosing the heat of the present moment over the cold reality of the past. Eventually, Kat left, the door clicking shut behind her. And then the apartment felt empty in a different way, not just physically, but emotionally. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind a raw, aching awareness of everything unresolved. I sank onto the couch, heart pounding, mind racing, knowing full well that nothing we did today would erase the complicated mess of relationships, betrayals, and desires that clung to us like shadows. By nightfall, the city outside had quieted, the soft hum of streetlights replacing the chaos of the afternoon. Tomas and I sat together on the couch, silence stretching between us, not uncomfortable, but heavy with unspoken understanding. He reached for my hand, a simple gesture that somehow spoke louder than words. "We'll figure it out," he said softly, and I believed him. Not because I knew the future would be kind, but because for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't facing it alone. Meanwhile, Vanessa sat in her own world of grief. Ted wrestled with temptation he'd thought he'd conquered. Leslie plotted her next move with calculated precision, and Chelsea navigated the chaos of success and sabotage. Joey and Randy lurked in the shadows, their intentions as opaque and dangerous as ever. And Kat lingered, a reminder that even when you think you understand someone, there's always another layer, another secret, another betrayal waiting to surface. Life, it seemed, was nothing if not complicated. Messy, heartbreaking, terrifying. And yet, amidst all that chaos, there were moments, small, fleeting, beautiful, that made it all worth living. Tomas and I had found one today, brief and bright like a flare in the dark. Tomorrow, who knew what the world would throw at us? But tonight, we had this. And for now, that was enough. We're not done yet. There are so many threads still unraveling. The fallout from Doug's death, Vanessa's spiraling guilt, Leslie's relentless pursuit, Ted's temptation, Chelsea's fragile victories, Joey's dark games, and the simmering tension between Eva, Kat, and Tomas. Each of these stories deserves every heartbeat, every pause, every whispered thought. And I'll tell them all, piece by piece, until nothing is left hidden. Because that's what life is: chaos, love, betrayal, grief, passion, and the tiny moments that remind us we're still alive.